Welcome in, everybody. 1 second, I'm going to share this out. If you wouldn't mind doing the same, whether you're on Facebook, not Facebook, whether you're on Periscope or on YouTube, I'd appreciate give some support, getting this out there, letting your friends and family know that we are live and we're here to discuss the truth. Welcome in, SoCal Patriot. Cheryl, it's always a pleasure to have you on board. Oh. Another exciting day. Another exciting day. All right. That going. So, welcome in, everyone. Looks like YouTube is still. There we go. So YouTube is up and running. All right. So, welcome in, everyone. I am Jason Lyon, Mr. Mark of the Bearded Truth. I appreciate you guys for joining in on this wonderful Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for a lovely discussion revolving the ever comfortable, accepting, tolerant politics of today in America, 2018. So we have quite a bit to unfold, to unbox of what's been going on in recent past. Of course, this is not going to be all-encompassing. It seems like there was a massive dump of newsworthy things coming out that needs to really get hit. Grandpa's watching too. Welcome in, Grandpa. Hope everything is well for you guys over there. Send my love to everyone, of course, and love you, Grandpa. And we'll be FaceTiming you here soon. So back to the world of politics a little bit. So. The results are in. There's lots of things that recently got dropped within the last, 24, 48 hours. The first one that I really wanted to get into was Elizabeth Warren. So if you guys recall back to, I think it started back in the 2012 era when she started running for the Senate. Her ancestry became a point of interest for her opposition, as well as for the Republican Party as a whole. Now, Elizabeth Warren claims that she is Cherokee Indian. She claims that her mother was Cherokee Indian. She claims that her Mima and Papa were both Cherokee Indian. As if, everyone surrounding her family is just inherently Native American, pretty heavy in that factor. Well, she came out. And she finally, kind of to following the will of what President Trump wanted, was she came out and she actually performed a DNA test and had it analyzed. Well, they found five segments of everything that she has that possibly has Native American in her. Now, with those 5 segments, that means they came to the conclusion that she's less than 1/10 of 1%. She's the lineage was to the furthest extent would be the 10th generation. So her hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. Great grandparent was Cherokee. Right, so that's how far back we have to go in order to get this. She thinks that this has vindicated her. A lot of people are seeing the 1/1024th portion of her as being Native American is not enough in order to justify her being called Native American. I think I'm of that ilk as well, right? Because that could just merely mean that you became blood brothers with somebody 4 generations ago, 5 generations ago, and that was enough. I really don't find any validity to the idea that because you were less than 1,000th of a nationality that you get to claim that your entire heritage is based upon this, and this is just your truth, despite the evidence to the contrary. So she's come out and she's demanding of President Trump that he pay her $1 million to one of the organizations that would help out Native American women across this country. Now, I think it would be nice to see President Trump come out and provide that. We understand that it wouldn't be it wouldn't necessarily be a heavy burden on him, as well as it would be nice to see somebody so rich be able to show a little more philanthropist, a little more of his philanthropy. That would be nice to see. But no expectations, no demands should be made for him. But what has been refreshing, what has been really refreshing is seeing what the other senators, some of the GOP, and what they've been doing. So Lindsey Graham, who's been managing to really steal the limelight lately, and he's gotten a lot of support from Republicans and conservatives around the country because of the Judge Kavanaugh, or the now Justice Kavanaugh hearing, and how he was acting in there. But Lindsey Graham is now wanting to have a little challenge, if you will. And so he was on what day was this? On Tuesday, he was on the Fox and Friends show on Fox News, and he said he would take his own DNA test that would beat Warren at having Native American ancestry, and later said it would be terrible if it showed he was Iranian. I think it would be absolutely hilarious if he had some Iranian in him. But the opportunity for somebody to have higher than the 0.09% that Elizabeth Warren has is held by most, in accordance with one of the Daily Caller articles, would be higher to her percentage is actually lower than the average European American, which has 0.18% Native American, so double that, according to a comprehensive study done by the Genetic Literacy Project. So she's exactly at half of the average of Native of white European Americans. She's exactly half of that. So I think it's funny that she's trying to grandstand a little bit and trying to save face. I think it would really bode well, not just for her, but for the Democratic voters, for everyone around her, if she was to come out and just say, look, I went off of what my family told me. I never did the research. I never felt the necessity in order to verify it. And so that was my honest mistake. I think that would be the best way to do this. But of course, as we know, a lot of politicians out there, instead of just admitting their wrongs, instead of trying to right their wrongs, they would rather double down, become entranced in their stories, and maintain these stories and continue on. So I don't think that there's any idea out there that Elizabeth Warren will come out and make any form of an apology for this. She's going to continue to grandstand and demand that President Trump provides this money and everything else. Now, along with this, there happens to be a tradition, a level of honor and respect for their heritage, and that would be a lot of the Native American societies or tribes that are within this country. And because Elizabeth Warren has been so adamant about having her heritage come from the Cherokee tribe, the Cherokee Nation Secretary of State, Chuck Hoskin Jr., issued the following statement Monday in response to Senator Elizabeth Warren's DNA test claiming Native heritage. So, and I quote, "A DNA test is useless to determine tribal citizenship. Current DNA tests do not even distinguish between whether a person's ancestors were indigenous to North or South America. Sovereign tribal nations set their own legal requirements for citizenship, and while DNA tests can be used to determine lineage, such as paternity to an individual, it is not evidence for a tribal affiliation. Using a DNA test to lay claim to any connection to the Cherokee Nation or any tribal nation, even vaguely, is inappropriate and wrong. It makes a mockery out of the DNA tests and its legitimate uses, while also dishonoring legitimate tribal governments and their citizens, whose ancestors are well documented and whose heritage is proven. Senator Warren is undermining tribal interests with her continued claims of tribal heritage." So they were loud and vocal, and I think that that's the way that you have to be, really denouncing what she's been saying in her actions and everything about it. So it's nice to see them come out and try to clarify a little bit of the story, because specifically the Cherokee tribe, has been focused on maintaining an extremely solid record of being able to see where the heritage goes, where the lineage goes, and everything else, to be able to keep track of things. Something that's been lost on a lot of societies, especially here in America, right? We're seeing, as the generations go on, we care less about the heritage, and we care more about this idea of a melting pot, that everyone comes together and it doesn't matter where you come from. And so there's a little bit of less value in that. When does Rachel Dolezal and Sean King take the DNA test as well? We'll see if they will. So it's nice to see that one go that way. It's always comical to see the way that that's going. Another senator who got involved with this was Orrin Hatch. So he actually tweeted a picture of himself and actually of his DNA results, and it said he was 1/1024th T-Rex, and the rest of it was just other dinosaurs. So being able to have some good humor, good jokes, it's nice to see the lightheartedness of politics coming back. So now we know Elizabeth Warren, not in any way. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, PMS, you were all alone in the YouTube world. So we had that news get dropped on us. So finally, all of us that have been ever wondering in even the slightest bit if Elizabeth Warren is Native American, we know that she's not, but she has possibly at the 10th generation, she may have somebody there. And so finally we have some answers on that. That's nice to see. Now, while we're talking about some of the lightheartedness, the comical side of things, I gotta change the gears up a little bit. So over there in the Senate race over in Arizona, we have Republican Congresswoman Martha McSally, who came out after her Democratic opponent, Sinema. Now, the history behind this was that Sinema used to, in a discussion with, I believe it was with a newspaper or with a news reporter, she was saying that because she had opposed what had happened with 9/11 and everything else, situations surrounding that she was okay with American citizens going and fighting with ISIS against American troops. So that's the basic the context of this. But now what has happened is that McSally, right, the Republican Congresswoman McSally, accused her opponent of being okay with treason. So she's using this, and it's sad to see. I was reading a couple of the reports, and not a lot of them, well, not really any of them that I've been seeing, are really trying to paint the full picture and being able to say exactly what she said. So she still has not refused, or she's refused to apologize for the Taliban. She said to work with the Taliban, not with ISIS. I apologize. But she still has refused to apologize for those things. And so that would be advocating for people to attack the American troops. I failed to see how that would not be, maybe not in the lines of treason, but within the realm of, right? It's certainly in the area of treason. So we now have Democrats running in this manner that, just go ahead and oppose America, oppose the troops, oppose everybody, and go ahead and go over there and get your ass kicked. This is what they're pushing out there. While we're talking about fun Democratic senators doing giant mess ups, we have down in Missouri, Democratic Senator McCaskill just got caught by James O'Keefe. Now, James O'Keefe was from Project Veritas, and so he had his undercover journalist going in and taking videos. And while they were taking videos, they were talking to the staffers. And one of the things that the staffers said was that McCaskill is actually not telling the public, not telling the potential voters exactly how she feels about things, not espousing her platforms, her views, but instead saying things that will make them feel better, whether they're a lie or not. So so McCaskill's got herself in some hot water. She's been kind of close with Josh Hawley there, the Republican candidate. I still wish that we would have Austin Peterson still in there, but things happen. But so McCaskill's in hot water, and I think rightfully so, because if the idea is that when you run for office, regardless of what party you're on, if you're not going to espouse your own views and be elected honestly, that's a clear indication of how you're going to operate when you're in office. And we should encourage and enjoy whenever these things are being aired out. These are the kinds of things that are important for us, the citizens, to know that that's occurring. So hopefully the people of Missouri will speak up with the votes on November 6th and ensure that somebody that's not going to provide an integritous campaign is not being elected to office. So we'll have to wait and see how all of that plays out. And other big news that's been going on, we got to bring it back to Trump. So we talked about Elizabeth Warren and Trump and their interactions. Well, now we've got Trump again coming up. And I have a feeling, a pretty good feeling, but I have a feeling that we're going to bring up Trump for a third topic as well. So on yesterday, a U.S. judge had dismissed the adult film actress or prostitute with a camera. Quick side note, I don't understand why prostitution is illegal, but if you get if a camera involved, if you record it and you plan on selling it, it's now legal. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So I think it's just legal prostitution. So a legal prostitute dropped the defamation lawsuit. So he dismissed the defamation lawsuit from Stormy Daniels against President Trump. What makes it even worse for her, what makes it even more devastating, is that now she has to pay for his attorney fees. Now, if we go back through the entire cycle of what happened with Stormy Daniels, so Stormy Daniels and President Trump, allegedly, I think that everyone pretty much believes that it happens. I believe it. I think everyone at this moment can really believe that it really did happen. That he had an affair with Stormy Daniels. He was cheating on Melania Trump shortly after Barron was born. So in order to be quiet, he paid her. Gave her a non-disclosure agreement. His lawyer signed it. And then that was being paid again just before the election. It was late October. Goes through the election, gets elected to be president of the United States, and then she starts talking again. And so he hit her with a couple of tweets, and so she wanted to say that he was defaming her. And so the judge has dismissed that and said, now you have to pay for his legal fees. Now I'm completely interested, and I'm going to do some more digging. I'm going to find out exactly how much his attorney fees are. But could you imagine if her second payoff wasn't even a quarter, even a half, even an eighth, even a 16th of what his attorney fees are? Can you imagine if this makes her go broke, right? The woman who has been going after money, trying to get more and more money out of him, because obviously he is like a bank account. He does have an exorbitant amount of money. He has lost money personally since becoming president of the United States, but he still has an excess. And so if she's driving to dry out the well that is Trump's bank account and instead dries up her own and his goes unscathed, I think that would be really interesting. So it's her money. Her last hush fund was $130,000. I really doubt that the president's legal team will be to that extent, or that low of a number, because I don't think he just had one or two. I think he had a team of lawyers, and I don't think that any of these are going to be in any way a cheap deal. You know, it's going to be extremely difficult. She's going to have to go back out there to the strip clubs, and she's going to have to keep on making money. And since then, Trump has gone on Twitter again. So Trump just doesn't want to get out of the pot. He wants to keep going. He wants to keep making it a situation. So he goes on Twitter, and he said I believe this was on Monday. If not, it was this morning. Federal judge throws out Stormy Daniels' lawsuit versus Trump. Trump is entitled to full legal fees. At Fox News, great. Now I can go after Horseface and her third-rate lawyer in the great state of Texas. She will confirm the letter she signed. She knows nothing about me. A total con. So he calls her a horseface. Now let's be honest. Let's try to be objectivists here. Stormy Daniels does have slightly a horse face, right? Her and Sarah Michelle Parker, there's definitely some similarities between the two. That's okay. Just being honest about what's going on is okay. She does have a little bit of a horse face, so he was at least accurate in making a mockery of her. This also would be protected by the First Amendment. You can make fun of people. We know this is true. Otherwise, everyone on Twitter would be banned right now. Everyone on Facebook would be banned right now. So you can make fun of people, and she's upset about this. So her response to his tweet was, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present your president?" Hashtag not my president. You know, half the country's like, not my president. Mm-mm. So she's speaking to half the country right now. In addition to his shortcomings, he has demonstrated his incompetence, hatred of women, and lack of self-control on Twitter again, and perhaps a penchant for bestiality. Game on, Tiny. So she at least admits that she might be maybe a little bit of a horse face because he was into that kind of thing. So it's okay. But he has demonstrated his incompetence. So she came at him with a lawsuit. It got dismissed, thrown out, and it was him that was being incompetent. Hatred of women. So he doesn't like it whenever people go cut on their end of the deal when it comes to transactions that he's made with people, and so he goes after people. We've seen this in the past with men, women of all ethnicities. It's kind of an equal opportunity when it comes to Trump. If you mess up, he's going to call you out for it. He's going to go after you, right? That's one of the things that a lot of people like about him, was that he's not afraid to punch back. So I don't think that this shows any way a hatred for women. The idea that he's just a misogynist. This is just an overplayed buzzword that's being utilized by the left, right? Hatred of women, misogynist, they're extremely synonymous. And a lack of self-control on Twitter again. There's a theory going out there, and I really think that there's some serious validity to this. And that is that President Trump will make you hate yourself at the end of the day, right? So he will tweet at you, and you'll say something, and then weeks later, we'll see that come back and just hit you in the face. So his lack of self-control on Twitter, that's not necessarily like a lack of self-control. He doesn't have a muzzle. If that's what she's referring to, yes, absolutely. Trump is very bombastic. He's very open. He's very blunt. He's very New Yorker in that sense. And that's fine. But he's also, while he's lacking self-control and being incompetent, he's also being involved on so many different levels, on so many different areas, which have required not only his focus, but his administration's focus, right? So we have the stuff going over there and going on in Saudi Arabia, right? A reporter being killed. And so we're looking into investigating on that. He's involved with that. When it comes to the elections, right? He's getting involved with that. He's getting involved with a lot of the Senate races. He also is breaking records for how much money is being raised by a president in their second year of their first term. So he's over $180 million in revenue right now. And a lot of people are trying to speculate this as if it's just bad for Trump, like as if Trump's not going to be able to allocate that and utilize it for the good and for ensuring that he's going to be reelected and everything else. I think it's just he's a little bit more effective at multitasking than what we've seen in the past for a lot of previous administrations, and I think it's something that we should be cherishing a little bit. I think that the speed of effectively, the speed of Trump in office is certainly different than what we've seen from a lot of other administrations, right? When something is a focus by the media, we're not seeing much, we're not missing much in the background. Now, I say that, but there could also be situations in which, like, you know, Fast and Furious and whatnot, where things are absolutely happening on the background and the media is just completely ignoring it. But it's one ordeal that's happening in the background. Right now, we have so many different things. It's so impossible in order to keep track of everything that's going on. Like Justice Kavanaugh just did his first, was listening in on his first oral argument. So he got to see that aspect of that. We're seeing all these different big names coming after Trump. We're seeing all big names within the Democratic Party coming after Trump. We're seeing the media going after him for what's going on with Kanye. We're seeing the spending with the budgets, with everything. There's so many different things that are pulling Trump in so many different directions that I think it's really difficult in order to say that he's incompetent or lacks self-control. He lacks control on the Twitter fingers. The Twitter fingers go crazy, and that's fine. Right? A lot of people like that, and you can like that. I'm not a super huge fan of his tweeting, but you know, he is what he is, and he's going to keep on doing what he's going to keep doing. So, Stormy Daniels, she needs to downgrade herself to a tropical storm and just go ahead and be gone, like the rest of the hurricanes that have come through. If she keeps on fighting the fight, she's gonna just keep getting egg on her face. It's not working out well. Eventually got to learn to throw in the towel, fold your cards, and get out of town, you know. It's big. So I do want to go back to the Kanye West situation. I want to talk about that for a second. Kanye West goes in and talks with President Trump. Now, it's coming in kind of on the coattails of his wife, right, Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian comes in and gets clemency for a woman who had life sentence for drug trafficking charges. So President Trump provides her with clemency. Now Kanye West wants to go and talk about the 13th Amendment and also talk about prison reform. So when it comes to the 13th Amendment, right, a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's the Emancipation Proclamation, right? That's the amendment that got slavery taken out of. Well, if we actually read the 13th Amendment, and let me pull it up because I do not want to misquote it, but if we actually read the 13th Amendment, it actually enables slavery all at the same time, right? Why is this? Problem with DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo doesn't give you the same top ones that I want them to. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States or any place subject of their jurisdiction, is how it should say. And this is kind of what Kanye West had been advocating for. But the way that the 13th Amendment actually is read is neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So you can't be a slave unless you've committed a crime. And if you've committed a crime and you're convicted, then you can become a slave, right? This is a lot of justification for in the prison system, how people are forced to work to create signs, create furniture, create this, that, and the other. And these things are given by small pay or whatever, or just to bide time, you know, hard labor and whatnot. So the idea that we get rid of that and we find ways to rehabilitate those that are within the system will be much better than just putting them to labor, putting them to work. That was one of the things that Kanye West wanted to talk about. Now, a lot of people have already seen on Don Lemon's show on CNN, where he had a panel of people, and those people were saying things like, this is what happens when Negroes don't read. The black people want to put Kanye West up for the racial draft and draft him out to another race. You know, he's the token Negro, like saying just absolutely repulsive, egregious things, and just allowing that to flow unchallenged by the Democrats. I think that there's really is more information on the background that a lot of people are missing, and it's the idea that if we look at slavery, if we look at those the people of that era, right? When one slave was to leave the plantation, when one person was to make themselves free, not only did they punish the other slaves that were on that plantation, but then they also wanted those slaves to also punish the slave that got away if they got them back. And so this is really, if we look at the way that the Democrats, right, the Democrats and the media, synonymous effectively. If we look at the way that they've been denouncing Kanye West and attacking Kanye West, it really does seem as if it is the idea that they're going after him for becoming free from the plantation, right? Because if you actually listen to what Kanye was saying, right, he was like, we need to do reform, welfare, right? Government welfare can cause problems, it can cause issues, and cause people to become dependent and not want to work, this, that, and the other. And somehow they conflated this. They manipulated the story and were able to say things to the context of he's just a white supremacist, or he's using white supremacy speech via ventriloquism, right? So he's just opening his mouth and white supremacy is spewing out. It's so stupid. It really does look as if it's a scare tactic. It's a protection tactic, in order to ensure that they don't lose anyone else. If he starts advocating that people can be free and start thinking and start working with President Trump and talking with President Trump, then more people will see President Trump more as a human being, and then that's going to hurt them. That's going to hurt the Democrats. That's going to hurt the media. They're going to be viewed as even more of the fake news. There's just going to be no trust, no reliability when it comes to the media anymore. And I think that that's really the big fear there. All right. So we're going to keep on watching this. We're going to keep seeing the left go hysterical. I'm personally enjoying it. I love it. I love watching the media just go into a tailspin and not be able to find any way to get out of it. It's beautiful. But I want to shift gears now to some bad news, some horrible news, some news that I've been telling you guys will be coming, and that a lot of people have been calling it. And that is that the U.S. government closed the 2018 fiscal year $779 billion in the red, its highest deficit in 6 years. So whenever we've talked about tax cuts, whenever we talked about spending, whenever you think of a financial, a way of getting out of financial debt, the idea is regardless of what your revenue is doing, you cut the spending. What has been happening in Washington, D.C., is that we have a two-party system that is failing the American populace. You have the Democrats wanting to spend more for welfare, for social safety nets, for providing new programs, for research and development on climate change, for infrastructure. The list goes on and on. And the Republican Party doesn't care what the left wants to spend on or the Democrats want to spend on, right? When they come in, they're gonna swat at it a little bit, but they're not going to do anything. What they're focused on is spending more for the military, for immigration. President Trump wants to spend more on healthcare. They've got their own sacred cows that need money thrown at, right? So you have these two different parties that they're not going to cut spending, but they're just going to blow it out this way, and this one will blow it out, and this one will blow it out, and the spending just continues to grow. So the question becomes, how do we pay for it? Of course, with Washington, D.C., with the federal government and the way that it's always been, the idea is tax. So we're going to tax you when you make money. We're going to tax you when you spend your money. We're going to tax you when you live in a house. We're going to tax the land that you live on. We're going to tax the car that you buy, tax the gas that goes into the car. We're going to tax you when you buy food. We're going to tax you when you get your water. We're going to tax you on your electricity. We're going to tax you on all of your energy sources. And then when it comes to the end of your life, we're going to tax you again. So they tax us in every way possible. And that's the only way that they think that they can function. It's not about providing a service and expecting the people to say, hey, I like this service and want to pay for it. Instead, what they do is they come after you with a gun and they say, hey, pay your taxes or you're going to jail. So everyone pays their taxes, and they still, even at the threat of violence, even at the threat of putting people in jail, are incapable of paying off their own debts. So $779 billion deficit for the year, and that's after a giant tax cut. Now, a lot of people, a lot of the media is trying to focus on this tax cuts and blame it on that. Why this is an inaccurate statement, why is this completely off base, is because of the idea that revenue has gone up despite having tax cuts. So the tax cuts across the whole entire spectrum, right? 90% of Americans have received a tax cuts. They pay less in taxes. We have an increase in revenue. So that came from new jobs, more jobs, from business growth, from more transactions happening. So when you have all of these things growing, they have more ways of collecting this revenue, and revenue went up. But the spending of what I was talking about earlier has gone up as well. So President Trump and Congress has put more money in for the military. They put more money into the military, being able to build up the Navy, build up the Army, build up the services in which they said were hollowed out. And we have more money being spent on infrastructure. We have money trying to be allocated for a border wall. We have more money being allocated, being sent for foreign aid. We just have money being thrown around the world and is not going towards the debt. So, as this continues, I want to remind everyone, while President Trump was on the campaign trail, he made a promise to the American populace. That promise was that by the end of his second term, we will not have a national debt. As time goes on, I am becoming more and more sure that this is so unlikely. This is not going to happen, that we will not have a nation free of debt. There would be drastic cuts happening in order to make this function. There's no possibility at this point that will be something that he can come through on. And I think that was the one promise out of President Trump that I was hoping the most that he would actually come through on. Right, $21.5 trillion in debt right now. $21.5 trillion in debt, and ever growing as fast as possible. When we look at President Trump during President Obama's time, he was blowing him up. He was attacking President Obama because of the deficit, and now that he's in office, he's realizing it's not quite that simple. It's not quite that easy. To stand in front of the American populace and say, look, the federal government can't be doing this. We can't be spending this exorbitant amount of money, especially on the revenue that we have. I want to cut the taxes for you, which also means I need to cut the spending. We need to get our deficit in order, and then we need to actually get our debt in order. Get us on a surplus for a while and pay off our debt, and then we can regrow as a country, and we can find ways of allocating money, of having it go through to the states and be able to get that money and actually provide these social safety nets that you guys desire and everything else, right? That's something that he won't do. That's something that we are not going to see from any president, really, right? I would love to see a president come in, get elected, and actually run on that platform. I want to stop creating problems for you, the American people. I don't want to put our economy at risk. I don't want to put our nation at risk. I want to get us free from being owed, or from owing money to other countries to where they don't have a chip over us. They can't levy against us. They have no control over us. I want us to be a free nation, and that starts from the top down and the bottom up, right? I want it free entirely. We won't see that, and I wish that we would. That would be a beautiful, beautiful world that we could live in. Although, while we were talking about this, the data did show that there was a $119 billion budget surplus in September. Why can't we keep that going? Why can't we just stop spending money? We'll be better. We'll be better, I promise you. So it's interesting to see the way that all this is being played out. I'm saying this, and in the back of my mind, I'm remembering President Trump talking about healthcare. And President Trump actually wants to keep the government involved in healthcare. He wants to ensure that I apologize, for pre-existing conditions to be mandated by the federal government to ensure the protection of people. While we're talking a little bit about healthcare, right? Dave Smith actually on his show from Monday, I believe it was, had a really good idea, an idea that stuck with me. And his idea, he used the healthcare, which is a technological driven market. He conflated that to televisions. And he said, look, if we get the government out of it, if we get the government out of healthcare, it'll be just like TVs. So in TVs, poor people of today have better TVs than the rich of 10 years ago. Right? So he had a quite a long discussion and explanation, and it's sound. It's absolutely sound, right? We get the government out of healthcare. Whenever the government's involved and it's subsidizing, it's taking people's tax dollars and allocating it to these different markets, we don't see a decrease in cost for the people. We actually see an increase in cost, right? We've seen this with college education. We've seen this in housing areas where there's Section 8 housing and whatnot. We see the cost rise whenever government subsidizes in those areas. And so when the government got involved with healthcare, how did they make this grow? Well, so we have things like Cobra from, I forgot the president, I apologize. It was Reagan, from President Reagan. So President Reagan brought in Cobra, and that was one thing that caused the cost to go up. So this was created through the idea that healthcare providers, if they are not an emergency provider, or if they are unable to provide their emergency services for people coming in, they would be required, these areas, these healthcare providers would be required to stabilize the patient and provide transportation for the patient to other places, right? That's a small burden. Another thing that was created through this legislation was the idea that if you come into a hospital and you require emergency services, then they can't refuse your services. So you get the services performed for you, and they cannot go after you for that cost. That falls back on the taxpayer. So we're seeing this in a lot of different areas. It is another burden that's happening in there. Fast forwarding to now, what we're seeing is a much larger attack on our healthcare. This comes from Obamacare, right? The individual mandate was a burden because we were subsidizing. If you didn't have healthcare, you were subsidizing others. If you had healthcare, right, pre-existing conditions didn't matter. So if you wanted to have insurance, right, you could have it at an affordable, quote unquote, affordable rate. And so that meant if let's say you had cancer, and then you're like, all right, I have cancer, I want to go get insurance. Now the insurance company has to pay for this. So that causes everybody's rates to go up. So the pre-existing conditions caused the rates to go up. This was something that was created by the Affordable Care Act and is being continued on. President Trump still is in favor of this. So that was a huge burden on there. And then also because of the Affordable Care Act, many of the scripters of the Affordable Care Act even said that this was a way to push us towards single payer. Now, what that did was that actually had increased the regulations on different providers, so it made it more difficult. And so some of the providers were unable to keep up with these standards. They were dropping out. Whenever you have competition being forced out by the government, right? It's how you get government-ran monopolies, but you have lower competition means that they can charge more and provide less. Right, and the exact opposite happens when you have more competition. Right, they have to sell it for less and provide more in order to get those customers. So we're seeing so many different aspects that we're coming together and creating a larger cost for the people, for the populace, in order to get healthcare. And we still have President Trump coming out and endorsing things like pre-existing conditions. We still have President Trump saying we can create something better than Obamacare. We still have President Trump not realizing that when the government is involved with services, with markets, you're not just paying for the services and markets, but you're also paying for the government bureaucracy, for the bureaucrats. So you're paying for you're paying for whatever those bureaucrats want to spend money on, however they want to allocate it, however they want to work it. And so it's not in America's best interest to have to pay, 55 cents on the dollar to the bureaucrats and then 45 cents to the healthcare. Especially when the study came out showing that it would be about $3.2 trillion per year on average, right? 32 trillion over 10 years. It's an exorbitant amount of money. Like President Trump, I don't care to what extent you want the government involved with it. Get the government out of the healthcare. It'll be better for everyone. I promise. And like what Dave Smith was saying, going back to that, right? If we got the government out, the poor people 10 years from now will have better health care, get a better service than the rich people of today. That would be a much better thing for America. It would be much better for all of us. It would bring back liberty. It would be in the pursuance of the Constitution. It would be in the pursuance of the interest of the people, and it would actually enable us to have a better society. Get the government out of it. The government's slow, it's lethargic, and it's not responsive to the people's needs. So it's a frustrating situation for sure. But yeah, so I realized we went on a huge tirade. So it's this idea that the government is able to spend this money, and they're going to keep spending money, and the money is always in a good spot. They're always saying, "Look, we're gonna put this money to good use," and it never is, because it'd be better spent paying off the debt, the debt that they created, that they voted on, that they did for us. And the best thing that they could do for us is to stop stealing our money and to stop wasting it. It's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. I'm surprised that more people are not being vocal against the government in the way that they spend our money, in the way that they squander our money. It was designed to be inefficient. Absolutely, it was designed to be inefficient, and it was completely effective in that manner. I just look at it, and people wonder why I am a libertarian, why I am such a small government person, and that's it, right? When you have a government that fails you in so many different ways, eventually say, hey, maybe we could do without it. Maybe we could try option B. And you can't have option B when option A says, I'm your only option. So it'll be good. Trying to see what other articles I had tweeted out and whatnot. Yeah, you guys have any questions while I pull up this stuff? Feel free to ask away. I'm actually paying a little bit of attention to the chat right now. I realize I've been ignoring you guys a little bit, so I apologize for that. But it's still getting some used to, right? So for those of you who are not aware, just got some new equipment, got some new streams going on, and new ways that everything's functioning. So it's a little more difficult in order to watch everything so closely. It's just taking a little bit getting used to, but it's fine. And it's unconstitutional. Absolutely, it's unconstitutional. Thank you. See, I usually I'm the one that's always like, this is unconstitutional. This is unconstitutional, and it's nice to see other people say it for me. Thank you. I do want to give you guys a quote, because lately we've been talking about civility, reuniting with civility, having respect, and being a better person. And so this quote, I don't recall where I got it from, but I shared it out on Facebook last year. And what about it is unconstitutional? So which Which aspect are you asking about? Are you asking about healthcare or the spending and how everything's going? Always, the quote was, "I spend my life trying to prove to my shadow that I'm someone worthy of it to follow." I spend my life trying to prove to my shadow that I'm someone worthy of it to follow. I just think that's it's an amazing quote. It's a great quote. But if so, the question, if the question was what part of it was looking at porn, what part of it's unconstitutional? If you're with regards to healthcare or things like that, it really does. Everyone tries to justify. To fix the economy, would it be better to have a stronger dollar or a weaker dollar? It really wouldn't. From my understanding, and I may be wrong, but a stronger dollar would be worth more to be able to pay it off. But it also, that gets so because of the Federal Reserve, because of the way that the Federal Reserve works, as the dollar gets built up, they're going to raise the interest rates. The interest rates raise up, and then that's actually is going to fight against it. And so I want to say that I want to lean towards a stronger dollar would be better for being able to pay off our debts. But at the same time, I would worry about the interest rates and how much is there that overcoming what the weaker dollar would be able to do. So I think as long as we have a weak dollar and we don't raise the interest rates and we just throw as much money at it, we can take it out without too much pain. But it'll be interesting to see the way that goes. The spending and the taxation. So taxation is contrary to well, at least when it comes to the income taxes, is contrary to the idea of the original intent of the Constitution, right? So it was never an idea that you would be taxed for what you do. You'd be taxed for, basically it was the tariffs, right? You sell this, you sell that, you buy this, you buy that, and they would be able to apply a tariff and make you pay for it that way. So this would be effectively a sales tax. That was their idea. That was the original intent, and it's clear that that's not how the American populace wants it. I guess that's how the progressives have colluded with the people to get them to think, a progressive tax system on your income and everything else. It's disgusting. Hold on. So the Federal Reserve controls the federal funds rate and the discount rate, prime rate. Okay, so if you're talking about the prime rate, this one is not. I would agree with you. This one is not controlled by the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve raises or lowers interest rates through its regularly scheduled Federal Open Market Committee on the two that they do control. So they do have some effects, not entire effects on it. But yeah. So I realize tonight's like a little bit of a slow night. I expected to spend a little more time on the first one. So with that, guys, I'm gonna hop off here. I'm sorry for the show tonight. I feel like it was a little lackluster, a little bit missing on the enthusiasm on great topics, or at least me spending them in a much better way. So I apologize for that. Can a member of government be impeached for waste and abuse? Yes, impeachment is something that should be done more frequently. I feel like the legislatures have failed us by not impeaching more people. We need to keep impeaching people whenever they're acting unbecoming of their office. When you're going out there and advocating for harassment, for assault of your political opponents, right? That is unbecoming of your office, and you should be impeached. So yes, and fraud, waste, and abuse was something that was talked about when the impeachment portion of the Constitution was actually put in to the Constitution. That was actually one of the justifications coming from the English common law, which is where impeachment comes from. So yes, you can absolutely impeach them for that. Irish, my good sir, welcome in. Thank you for the super hearts. And I realize there's quite a bit of a delay between you guys and myself of when things come out. I think we're at like 20-30 seconds. Still a good show. Katie approves. Good. My daughter approves, so we're good to go. So I want to say thank you guys for joining in tonight. I'll make sure that next show is a little more exciting. I feel like the Sunday show was leagues better than tonight. So I apologize for tonight. I think that we got through quite a bit of information. We got through quite a few topics. A little bit of insight provided, of course. But I don't know. I just feel off about tonight. So I apologize for you guys for that. Next time we'll always be better. Always strive to be better every day. Strive to be a better person than you were the day before. Provide a better product. So the question with regards to impeachments, though, so why does it never happen? Like when Malloy here in Connecticut spent over $1 million in a toll study so why doesn't it ever happen? Because both parties are complacent and corrupt. Outsourced to a different state. Not call for impeachment. So because both parties are corrupt and they know that, and so eventually it gets to where both parties are able to effectively blackmail the other one. If it's not for past actions, it's for future actions. So they understand, look, if we create a precedent and we actually impeach somebody for wasting taxpayer dollars, when will I become susceptible for those same things? Right? We saw this. We've seen this routinely where members of Congress are not willing to go after others. The most recent example would be Eric Holder. Eric Holder lying to Congress under oath about Fast and Furious, right? Having people's blood on his hands because of his lies during Fast and Furious. We had that, and we actually had Republican members of Congress actually wanting to bring up articles of impeachment and actually push that through. And the Republican leadership refused to let that go through. They didn't want it to go through. Why is that? Because they knew eventually that they could also be complacent. They could also be involved with something and be taken down themselves. So instead of holding themselves accountable, Congress has, for the most part, most of our government has become, what's the word I want to use? Has become untouchable, right? They're above the law. They create the law, so they're above the law, and they're accountable to no one. And we need to bring accountability back and integrity back to politics. That's what I'm striving for. That's what I'm trying to push. So that's why Governor Malloy won't be again looked at. So thank you guys all once again for joining in tonight. I appreciate you all. Thank you all for your likes, your retweets, your shares, your support. Thank you for the donations and everything else. You guys have all been beautiful and helping out with everything. Got next piece of equipment coming in here soon. So things are growing. Things are going to continue growing. So thank you all once again. Have a great night. I will see you guys Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern with a much better show. I promise. I apologize again for tonight.